Change of plans, we're talking about the other game that I was mentioning in my last video when I have a little bit more time. Today I didn't have that much time, and I really wanted to talk about this topic as well before Season 7 begins. And that is the release state of Season 7 from what we know so far. Parts of this will be things that aren't included that I would have liked to see, and part of this is just summarizing the situation of different roles, especially in Conquest, though we will take a quick look over to Joust at the end as well. The purpose is not to point out everything that I thought Hi-Rez did wrong when they introduced Season 7 or something, but rather just to say what I think should be considered maybe for future patches, or what I think is maybe not in the best state just yet. And with that, let's begin. Let us start with the individual roles in Conquest and their current situation and how that looks compared to the others. The first one is Mid, which is probably the least controversial one to talk about here. Mid had a massive overhaul to all penetration items, especially percentage penetration, and along with that also many power items changing in their stats, which means that it's going to be very hard to tell what the current state of Mid really is for a while until it's established what items are really going to be used. A Warlock's Staff meta would have completely different results from a Charon's Coin meta, for example, or an Obsidian Shard meta, so it's a bit of a wait and see thing here. They do benefit from the shared XP bonus being increased, and they also have an opportunity to easier secure the small mid harpies that exist now, as opposed to the big ones that we had before, because that side is kind of secluded, and they're also safer from ganks because that side is a lot harder to gank. The red buff gets a minor nerf, which of course affects the mages, but it's only a little bit of damage against guards. And on the other hand, now they no longer have to battle the ADC over the red buff because those guys are going to want the purple buff now, in most situations at least, meaning that in the end you will still benefit more because you will always have the red buff. So overall, I'd say for now, as far as we can judge it, Mid is in an okay place, and we'll just have to wait and see how things develop there. Solo is a different story. Solo initially had hard nerfs on PTS to shift the meta and to make it more resource intense, to make Soloists consider, do I want to use my ability for clear or for poke, or what do I want to do in each situation. And in order to do that, both Blue Buff and Totem of Ku got nerfs. Those, however, were later in PTS fully reverted. The only nerf that stayed from all this was the pot stacking nerf, where you can no longer use a normal healing potion and a chalice together in order to get maximum sustain. But I mean, to be honest, I always felt like that was more of a not glitchy interaction, but unintended interaction on Hi-Rez end anyways, and this is more them correcting that, though that may of course just be my stance on this. There was also a very minor nerf to Gladiator's Shield, decreasing the healing for multiple targets, but that's only really relevant for ganks or for team fights in the first place, and even in ganks it's not that big of a deal because most abilities don't necessarily hit multiple targets when you're just trying to get away. The other item that was changed that is definitely notable for solo lane is Mystical Mail, and that was mostly a buff, and this item will be a lot more accessible and a lot more frequently used in my opinion now. So they actually get a good thing in terms of itemization here as well, that I think overshadows the minor nerf a lot. I would say overall Solo is extremely strong right now, and given that they were supposed to have more resource management, that wasn't really achieved. Nothing was really achieved in terms of changes that would slightly decrease Solo's impact. They just got increases in every regard, with the exception of pots, so they're a little bit more gankable than before, and they might see some more ganks because other lanes are not as gankable, but then you also get free wards. The whole resource management thing kinda fell apart anyways because certain guards are not dependent on this, and Kukulkan got his buffs at the same time as this change happened, so he would have been super crazy, and then you have other guards that are strong at the moment anyways, like Emoja for example, who also don't really depend on this. So yeah, you would have just pushed a very boring and stale meta, and it's going to be hard to actually find a fix to that as long as we have no mana gods in the game. When it comes to jungle, there is definitely more focus on farming in the jungle now, with new camps added, even though they aren't exactly for junglers, but also with a new objective added. The new objective being the extra gold chalices. I have to say that the new objective is incredibly boring and benefits everyone across the map equally, so it's not anything that benefits the jungler directly. It's more a task for the jungler to clear it up, along with the mid laner sometimes. And it's not something that offers any interesting new mechanics or dynamics that change the battle or anything. It's just there to clobber down on it and get some gold. That's it. I don't know. As I said, this video is not going to be a high-risk bashing one, but at this point I have to say this particular change, I don't get it. To me, there are not many options for a worse execution of a new jungle objective. The only thing that could have made it worse is letting the enemy jungler being able to invade yours, and that's about it. It's just not interesting at all, it's just a task, and that's it. The speed buff got a little bit of a buff. Wow, 10% crowd control reduction. Yeah, that's a big one. You get the benefit of shared XP bonus as well, which is useful as a jungler if you're sharing camps or lane. And Assassin's Blessing is buffed a little bit in terms of damage, but that is only to offset the extra camp tankiness that we have, so it doesn't really do anything in that regard. It's going to feel the same, or I think partially even worse than before, by a little. The only thing that I could say is possibly going to affect jungle in a positive way is that Malice buff, which might be useful for some junglers if you can find the right build for it. You can tell from my tone here that I don't think the jungle was changed in a positive way at all. I think the state of the jungle in Smite is very depressing at the moment as a jungle player, and I will probably not be playing jungle in the upcoming season because I don't have any interest in playing it anymore. It's just going to be a farm fest. I guess some of those late game farmers are going to come back, Mercury's going to come back, and that's it. There were a lot of interesting suggestions on what can be done with the jungle, and I think it's very unfortunate that none of them were considered. Let's move on to more positive things, I guess, for those of you who are playing it, and that's dual lane. Carry or ADC only got buffs. There were no nerfs. There were initially some nerfs actually, but those were all reverted later down the road, so they don't really matter. The pen nerfs are all gone. Instead, crit was buffed across the board in many different ways. Many crit items that benefit many hunters are now stronger than before. Silver Branch Bow was also buffed. Purple buff was changed so that it now has an attack speed increase, meaning it's definitely going to be more useful for the ADC and is typically going to go to the ADC as well. You get extra XP and gold from the new camp that exists now, and Nemean Lion, Height of Nemean Lion was nerfed, meaning a counter to hunters was also nerfed. The shared XP bonus is of course beneficial for the ADC and the support, especially here. Now what's strange to me is that hunters weren't really in a bad place to begin with. They were solo farming in duo lane, I guess, but they wanted that. Most hunter players just wanted to have more solo farm, and that's why the lane developed that way, because they didn't want the support stealing their farm essentially. And now they're getting a lot of buffs, and those buffs just benefit them more, and most of them will not result in any change to the lane past the early game stages. So I don't really know why they happened that way and why there was no countermeasures to tune some things down as well. But I don't know what the plan for hires is going into the new season if they just want hunters to be super strong. Because so far it seems like it's mostly going to be a battle between carry and solo. Support got some changes in either direction. Guidance Blessing got a change to how the item works. It has less MP5 now, and the whole passive is a bit different, but it's arguably not that much worse than before, and this makes it more of a dual lane item, which is good. However, I personally think there's still no long-term incentive to stay in dual lane, because those early game harpies can give you a bit of an edge, and that can be beneficial, and I think it's very beneficial for the support to be in dual lane in early game, but past that, you're still gonna rotate out and your ADC is just gonna take those extra objectives on its own, I think, most of the time. And that's partially due to the fact that the XP and gold from that new objective aren't very high. They're not really worth it for a dual lane to stay together. You get the benefit of shared XP bonus once again, and the fact that purple is changed kind of means that you're going to lose it most of the time unless you're playing Sylvanas. And if you take it in any circumstance, then it's going to be weaker due to having lower protection reductions for most Guardians as well. So that means that your ganks will likely be weaker as well if you're going for purple and try, for example, to gank middle lane. You have, on the other hand, various buffs to aura items which will benefit supports a lot, so it's a bit so-so, I would say. If it wasn't for the Height of the Nemean Lion nerf, I would say supports would be in a relatively good place right now. why that nerf happened, I don't understand, and that is what makes them worse than before in a way, even though they would not frequently pick up that item. It's just that when you need that item, you need that item. And I really wish there would be more incentives for a real dual lane for supports. Now in terms of invades, some people think that nothing has changed. I think you should hold your horses on that one. We have the new Hand of the Gods, we have new free wards, we have the changed dual lane, and it seems so far that getting that early pressure in duo can be very rewarding because you get a lot more out of it now. So I don't think that we'll actually see that many support invades in early game anymore. I mean, I may be proven wrong later down the road, and I understand the concept of delaying as a benefit or making the enemy invest resources, but I really think, especially with shared XP going up as well, there's not as much of a loss when the invaded team just goes to lane together and everything, and then eventually you get to a point where invading might not be worth it anymore. We will generally see less aggression across the whole map. We have free wards, we have more walls in middle lane, ganking in solo is still hardly worth it, and junglers are more likely to farm anyways, and towers also give less gold, so the whole game is slowed significantly, and there are more changes like the red buff nerf and stuff, smaller things that I haven't even mentioned here. And that brings us to some other things that I think should have happened. So the new shield, Cat Shield, Chaos Shield, I think maybe a little bit strong, but that's maybe a bit of a minor thing. I would not be surprised if that gets nerfed later on the road. I think the nerf on Height of the Enemy and Lion should just be entirely reverted. I don't know what that was and where that came from, but it's not good. It's just not good. And then there are a lot of item changes that I feel like we're kind of missing. I think Mage's Blessing should have seen a buff, Assassin's Blessing should have seen a buff, Warrior's Blessing should have seen a nerf after the other changes were reverted. I think the Glowing Emerald Chi should get another look because Mail of Renewal and Stone of Gaia are barely ever used, honestly. And if you compare Stone of Gaia's passive and how much it heals to how much damage Mystical Mail does, it's kind of weird, to be honest. You have this one item that's supposed to heal, the other one is supposed to deal damage, and deals damage as AoE, while Stone of Gaia just heals yourself, and Mystical Mail does so much more damage than Stone of Gaia can heal against, which is strange. Of course, it doesn't work based on proximity, but considering that these items are still somewhat counterparts, I think there should be a bit more of a weighing between them. Then you have items like Ethereal Staff and Doom Orb that may be nerfed later down the road, or Transcendence Heartseeker. I understand why some of these were not touched yet with all the other changes coming in, but I still think that all of these items should be considered, but Hi-Rez has already mentioned that they might do that. Relic Dagger is still extremely strong and you should pick it up, because Hi-Rez said they're not going to nerf it anytime soon. And as we're already talking about items, I quickly want to take back something I said in a tweet regarding anti-heal. I don't think that's necessary anymore with the new shield, which I think is very, very strong for healing, so I think we'll need that anti-heal the way it is right now. I'm also very surprised we didn't see any buffs to Loki at all. Maybe that's because they are considering a rework at a later point. And I am surprised that they didn't nerf Umoja. Hi-Rez already addressed it. They said she is not that overwhelming in stats and that they're keeping a close eye on her and considering to nerf her later, but I will mention it here again because I think she's very strong. There was a conversation about percentage pen changes to physical guards, and I would really like to see that. I think it would be great if they did the same thing they did with mages for physical items and just, you know, overhaul it all, give us a fresh feeling for the season. They said that might happen like 1-2 patches down the road, basically, if they consider it, or 3 patches down the road. And I think it's a very, very good idea. I think that would rein in hunters in some ways and maybe make assassins a bit more interesting in terms of builds as well. So I would love to see a big overhaul like that. And last but not least, what I wanted to mention with Joust is it's too early, in my opinion, to talk about changes as a whole because the map is really not tested enough yet to see what it's capable of. But a visual change is something I would like to see. I think the skybox, much like with the old Conquest map when they changed that, does not look good on one half at the moment. One half looks absolutely great, but the other one is just this weird blurry smush of something. And I know that they can fix that. I know they've done that for the old map after I brought it up. So I do hope that they will do that for this map as well, because it would make it feel a lot nicer. And that's it for my long-term hopes for Season 7, but I have something else regarding Season 7 coming up in 2 days, when the season comes out. Between that is going to be, like I said, a video about another game. And then we'll have a pro player, who I will not name yet, that I have never made a video with before, who has played a lot of Season 7, and we're going to make a tier list together and talk about where the gods stand in Season 7 from what we can tell so far. So, if you want to see that, feel free to hit the sub button and the bell so you'll be notified of that. And other than that, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope to see you all for the next one tomorrow. Duke Sloth, out.